Sure, let's break this down a bit more and expand on it. So, the new changes to Canada's tourist visa policies. Yeah, they're pretty significant, and they could definitely impact how people travel to and from Canada in the near future. The Canadian government has decided to revise its approach to issuing visas, and this could have some pretty big effects, especially for frequent travelers. For years, Canada has been known for issuing 10-year multiple entry visas, which were kind of the standard. People would get this long-term visa, and it would allow them to travel in and out of Canada for up to 10 years without needing to apply for a new visa every time they wanted to visit. So, for frequent travelers, it was pretty convenient, and yeah, it made Canada an attractive destination for people from all over the world. But now, under the new guidelines, this is no longer going to be the case. Let's dive into what's changing and why. Hashtag what's changing. So, the new policy is all about giving more discretion to immigration officers when it comes to issuing visas. That means that immigration officers now have more power to decide whether to issue a single entry or multiple entry visa, and also to determine how long the visa will be valid for. The Canada Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship IRCC Department made this clear in a recent statement, saying that multiple entry visas issued to maximum validity are no longer considered to be the standard document. Basically, that means people won't automatically get that nice long 10-year visa anymore. I mean, if you're someone who frequently travels to Canada, this could be a bit concerning, right? Under the old system, once you got that 10-year visa, you had the peace of mind knowing you could come and go as you please for a decade. But now, you're going to be at the mercy of the immigration officer's judgment when it comes to how long your visa is valid for. It could be a single entry visa, meaning you'd only be allowed to enter the country once before having to reapply. Or it could be a multiple entry visa, but who knows how long it will be valid for. This change could definitely create uncertainty, especially for people who need to travel frequently for business, family reasons, or just for pleasure. Hashtag why the change? Okay, so why is Canada doing this, right? Well, there are a couple of factors at play here. First off, Canada's government under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been facing some significant challenges. The country is grappling with a variety of issues, including a housing shortage, rising cost of living, and general public dissatisfaction. These issues have contributed to a decline in approval ratings for the Trudeau administration. So, the government is looking for ways to address these challenges, and one of the areas they've targeted is immigration. Canada has been one of the world's most welcoming countries when it comes to immigration, with high levels of both permanent and temporary immigrants coming into the country every year. However, the government now seems to be focusing on reducing immigration levels, both permanent and temporary, in an attempt to ease some of the domestic pressures. One of the ways they're doing this is by revising the tourist visa policy, as well as tightening up certain other immigration programs. Another key point is that Canada is expecting a large number of temporary residents, people who come to the country on visitor visas or other short-term permits, to leave the country in the coming years as their visas expire. This is actually a concern for the Canadian government because if these people overstay their visas, it could lead to complications with border security and law enforcement. So, part of the reason for this new visa policy is to make sure that the country can better control who's coming in and how long they stay. Hashtag, what does this mean for travelers? Now, the immediate question for a lot of people will be, how does this affect me if I'm a frequent traveler or someone who regularly visits Canada? Well, there are a few key points to keep in mind. First off, if you're someone who likes to visit Canada on a regular basis, you might no longer be guaranteed that 10-year visa. Instead, immigration officers will have the authority to issue visas on a case-by-case basis, which could result in shorter stays or less predictable entry timelines. So, yeah, that could be frustrating for people who've been used to the long-term visa system. Additionally, those whose visas are nearing expiration will need to consider their plans more carefully. With the new system in place, if your visa is about to expire and you want to extend your stay, you may find it more difficult to do so, especially if you're applying for another multiple entry visa. Immigration officers are now more likely to scrutinize the reasons for your visit and assess whether you actually need a longer stay or if a shorter stay would suffice. And then, of course, there's the issue of enforcement. The Canadian government has also signaled that it will be cracking down on people who overstay their visas. In fact, they're preparing to enforce deportations for individuals who are found to have overstayed their welcome. So, yeah, if you're someone who's used to staying in Canada for extended periods without much trouble, you'll want to make sure you stay on top of your visa status to avoid any potential legal issues. Hashtag other changes. The Post-Graduation Work Permit PGWP program. But that's not the only major change coming out of Canada's immigration system. On top of the revisions to tourist visa policies, Canada is also making some significant updates to the Post-Graduation Work Permit PGWP program. This is a program that allows international students who completed their studies in Canada to apply for a work permit, which then allows them to stay and work in the country for a period of time after graduation. Starting November 1st, 2024, there will be a few changes to the PGWP program that applicants need to be aware of. For one, there will be new language requirements for applicants. So, yeah, if you're an international student hoping to apply for the PGWP, you'll now need to demonstrate a certain level of language proficiency, both in English and French. For English speakers, the Canadian Language Benchmarks, CLB, will be used to assess your language skills. For French speakers, the Niveau de Compétence Linguistique Canadien, NCLC, will be used. These tests will evaluate your skills in reading, writing, listening, and speaking, which means that you'll need to show a solid level of competence across all areas of the language, not just one or two. The language tests that are accepted for these assessments include things like the Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program, CELPIP, the International English Language Testing System, IELTS, and the Pearson Test of English, PT, Core for English. For French, the Test d'Évaluation de Français, TF Canada, and the Test de Connaissance du Français, TCF Canada, are acceptable. I should also mention that these language test results must be less than 2 years old when you apply. So, if you're planning to apply for a PGWP, you'll need to make sure you have recent proof of your language proficiency, and the test results can't be older than 2 years from the time of your application. Looking ahead, with these new visa and work permit changes, it's clear that Canada is trying to tighten its immigration policies and create a more selective process for entry into the country. While this might be a step toward addressing domestic challenges, it could also make it more difficult for people, especially frequent travelers and international students, to navigate the immigration system. If you're someone planning to visit or study in Canada in the future, it's definitely a good idea to stay informed about these changes and make sure your documentation is in order. With the increased discretion given to immigration officers, there's a bit more uncertainty than before, so being proactive and prepared will be key. Anyway, yeah, that's the gist of the new guidelines. Let me know if you want more details on anything specific.
Thanks for watching our video. Please hit the button and subscribe the channel.